So it's no surprise that the Utah Jazz ended up having a high turnover at the trade deadline and also at the end of the regular season when their season roughly concluded because they didn't make the playoffs. And going into the free agency and trade period of the offseason, there were a lot of changes that got made, a lot of additions, but there were also a decent number of subtractions, and some of them were more notable than others. With that being said, it's reasonable to assume that they went off and just disappeared into nothing. But I wanted to go ahead and take a little bit of time out to detail where the people we lost this past season ended up turning out and where they will be playing next year, if they will in fact be in the NBA or overseas. With that being said, it's your boy Ray Tubes. Thanks for tuning in this video. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this one. First and foremost, let's start with the one and only 10-day contract general, Kris Dunn, who I was very fond of and I thought we should have brought back, but in the end, we ended up allowing him to slip away in a sign and trade deal to the Los Angeles Clippers in a 3-year, $16.2 million deal early on in July, which was honestly fair, to be quite honest. Now, it ended up turning into a sign and trade for Russell Westbrook and a future second round draft pick with cash considerations. Westbrook's no longer with the team, obviously, and that was that for him. Simone Fontecchio was the next interesting person on the roster, as we found him to be in interesting waters because at the trade deadline, I was fond of him. He was playing up the standard. He was improving on defense, and offensively, he was hitting his three-pointers like no other. But it wasn't enough to end up keeping him, and they didn't want to pay him at the end of the season. And so that made sense to me in the beginning because I was thinking, okay, well, that means he's going to get a really decent contract. And when he went and got traded to the Pistons, he was doing really good. And he was averaging about 15.5 points a game. He was shooting lights out. He was doing a lot of things well for their team. And of course, the Pistons are a poor roster overall from a talent standpoint. And though they've stepped up this offseason, at the time, they really didn't have much of anything besides Cade Cunningham and a couple of the younger guys to work with. However, they ended up re-signing him, yes, but it was not nearly for the payday that I thought we were going to see out of it, because if we were going to be able to retain him for $8 million a year, I think that it would have been worth entertaining, but it seems like they just felt like it wasn't, so they decided to go the younger route through the draft. Understandable, but he ended up signing a 2-year, $16 million deal to remain with the Pistons, and after a strong year, it was just very interesting. Now, the overall point that comes out of that is the fact that we ended up trading him for the 32nd overall pick in the draft, which turned into Duke center Kyle Filipowski, who wasn't supposed to be available then. So if Filipowski ends up being the player that we all believe him being capable of becoming, then this could actually be a very net positive move. And already it doesn't seem like it's that lopsided as we once believed it would be. Because let's be honest, most second round picks just don't amount to anything once they reach the NBA level, or stay beyond about 3 seasons in the league. Kyle has the opportunity to be one of those anomalies that takes that next step forward. Now, taking that next look at the next potential person, it was Kelly Olynyk, who was also dealt at the trade deadline. He ended up going to the Toronto Raptors, which he is originally from Canada, so it worked out, even though he's not from that general area of Canada. Nevertheless, he's closer to home now, and he signed a 2-year, $26 million deal to stay with the Toronto Raptors. So I'm not going to lie, that was a really good deal for him. Also, Ochai Agbaji still is with that team, as he was also sent away in that deal to the Toronto Raptors, which made things a little bit more interesting. Now, they did end up getting traded for the 29th pick in June's draft, which was used to get Isaiah Collier, which was interesting alongside some other players that are also not on the roster anymore, but we'll go over those people as well. Kenneth Lofton Jr., I really enjoyed watching him play. I liked the effort. I liked him losing his weight. I liked him getting into playing shape and really just showing what he could do. Now, he didn't do great in this summer league, and that ultimately, I think, ended up being the nail in the coffin that led to him getting cut. But he did end up showing enough off to end up signing a 1-year deal with the Chicago Bulls, interestingly enough, who aren't doing much right, but I think this was a positive experimental play on their part. Omer Yurtseven was stuck behind John Collins and Walker Kessler in the rotation, and he never really got a strong footing, though he did get a decent sample size of games to show what he could do. He appeared in 48 games. He agreed to a principal deal with the Greek powerhouse Panathinaikos, but he will be waiting to officially sign that contract until he's certain and completely positive that no NBA offers are on the table. Because if there's an NBA opportunity available to him, he wants to take that step. And understandably so, because I believe that he has a lot to offer the game. And while he may never end up being an all-star caliber player, I think that he's a very solid rotation piece. And I really felt like he was somebody that we should have kept instead of releasing this offseason as we did. Moving on to Luka Samanic, he ended up signing a 10-day contract back in the 2022-2023 season and played well enough to get a one-year extension up through this summer. However, he has been most recently rumored to be signing with the Spanish powerhouse of Baskonia, but recent reports suggest that he may end up be going to Fenerbahce in Turkey, which is a decent team, and honestly, any team that is overseas for the most part that any NBA player, even a rotation piece, ends up going to, will end up being a team that they end up dominating on. So I do look forward to that if that does end up being his world. I never really saw Luka being a extremely net positive player on the court, and he did have his moments here and there, but it was never anything substantial enough to justify him sticking around long term, and understandably so. He ended up with the likelihood of playing overseas, as he righteously deserves at the very least to do. Darius Bazley was somebody that I was very high on in the summer league. I just think that he didn't play well enough to earn himself an opportunity to stay with the main roster going into this next year, as he ended up getting cut the same day right before his contract for this year would have been guaranteed alongside one Kenneth Lofton Jr. But nevertheless, he ended up getting cut, which sucked. But he was supposed to be a veteran defender. He was supposed to be a solid just overall presence on that side of the ball. He plays a lot taller than his height. He's lower than 6'10", but he plays like he's darn near 6'11", the way he protects the paint, rebounds well, and just plays solid paint defense. But nevertheless, he got sent out the door, and there were other contracts given out to the likes of Eubanks, Mikhailiuk, and Patty Mills. So Bazley ends up remaining an unrestricted free agent right now, but hopefully he does end up finding a roster that will end up taking him under their wing and accepting him for what he's worth. Moving on to Talen Horton-Tucker, he was a mainstay of the rotation over the past 2 years. He did not have a good year this past year, and things looked really, really ugly when he was on the court. He never really got into the niche of things that would have allowed him to be the most successful version of himself that he was capable of doing. And his overall shooting splits were just so egregiously bad up until one point when he had been benched for a minute and came back and had spot minutes that it just didn't really justify having him on the roster anymore. As a result, they allowed him to just run free at the end of the season, and he remains unsigned. But because he's only 23 years old and he had a lot of promise previously, I think that somebody will end up giving him the opportunity, even if it isn't right before the season starts. At some point during this regular season, I could see him getting picked up just for some depth, or if an injury ends up occurring, he should be on the short list of players that is reliable enough to pull up and give a risky chance to. Kira Lewis Jr. is also the last player that we will be talking about. He was just a throw-in in the Olynyk Agbaji trade when we sent them to the Raptors. He came over to us. He made 12 appearances with the Jazz late in the season, didn't really do much of anything, but the former lottery pick ended up playing with the Houston Rockets during this most recent Summer League's team season, but remains unsigned this offseason, and he is one of the bleak pictures because I don't know how likely it is that a team ends up giving him an opportunity. But again, he's young, and while he doesn't have the same resume as a Talen Horton-Tucker, I think that he might have a little bit better of a chance to get picked up by somebody over a Luka Samanic. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Who out of these players did you miss the most personally? And is there anybody on that list that you wish we would have retained, or somebody that you think should have been sent somewhere else perhaps? With that being said, it's your boy Ray Tubes. Thanks for tuning in this video. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, become a member, or drop a donation to help support the content. And as always, good morning, good evening, and good night. And whenever you're on the globe watching, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.